इंडिया स्पीक्स डेली को सब्सक्राइब करें, उसके बेल आइकन को ज़रूर दबाएं यदि आपको इसकी पत्रकारिता पसंद हो। धन्यवाद।
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to India Speaks Daily. Talking about Kashmiri Pandits, it's been 30 years since they've been literally living in a state of exile, abandoning their homes in the 90s due to the wave of Islamic insurgency, Islamic militancy that swept through Jammu and Kashmir. The more fortunate ones, the ones with money and a bit of means and resources, fled to various Indian cities like Pune, Lucknow, Delhi, etc. and settled over there. Some of the Kashmiri Pandits even got settled abroad. The less fortunate ones are still living in refugee camps in Jammu. 30 years since the Kashmiri Pandits suffered acute displacement, and the deep sense of pain, of anguish, of agony still pervades the lives of Kashmiri Pandits. The deep sense of loss of a cultural identity still haunts the Kashmiri Pandits. These scars are very much fresh in their hearts. And even after the removal of Article 370, there has been little or no talk by the government, nothing by the way of commitment when it comes to chalking out a roadmap for rehabilitation of Kashmiri Pandits back in the valley, when it comes to chalking out a roadmap of making Jammu and Kashmir safe for the Kashmiri Pandits so that they can go back to the valley and reclaim their cultural roots again. Now, in the meantime, even as the mainstream media continues to ignore and sidestep the issue of Kashmiri Pandits, continues to conveniently dodge it, a ray of hope has been coming from one of the most unexpected quarters, Bollywood, that is. The veteran Bollywood director Vidhu Vinod Chopra has made a movie on Kashmiri Pandits. He's made a movie showcasing the plight of Kashmiri Pandits, trying to visually catch the whole narrative, the whole saga of their displacement. In fact, he has cast many of the original Pandits as refugees in his film, the ones who are actually living as refugees in the camps in Jammu, though they have been cast in the film, in Vidhu Vinod Chopra's film. Shikara is due for release in the first week of February, and it is based on the autobiographical book by Rahul Pandita, who is himself a Kashmiri Pandit, and the book is called Our Moon Has Blood Clots. So the book by Rahul Pandita is basically in the form of a memoir that traces the story of his family as his family suffered displacement, and the narrative of his family is then used to comment on the situation, on the story of displacement of the entire Pandit community, entire Kashmiri Pandit community. So the film is loosely based on Rahul Pandita's book. And so just as people had begun to get excited that finally there's a film that brings to screen the hitherto untouched topic, because let's not forget that this is the first time that the issue of Kashmiri Pandits has been brought to the celluloid screen in Bollywood. Well, of course, Kashmir has been there on the Bollywood screen several times. There have been films showcasing the overall effect of militancy in the Kashmir Valley. But this is the first time that we are getting a film that is exclusively focusing on the Kashmiri Pandits and exclusively claiming to talk about the plight of Kashmiri Pandits. However, there has been a sense of disappointment after people have seen the recent interview of Shikara's director Vidhu Vinod Chopra on Times Now. So Now there's a certain controversy building around Shikara, and this interview precisely gave rise to this controversy. As in this interview, Vidhu Vinod Chopra constantly evaded concrete questions from the news anchor related to the problem of Kashmiri Pandits, such as about what he expected from the government now, about if he was expecting a roadmap to be chalked out after they return to the valley, and basically factual questions with regard to what the government should now do about Kashmiri Pandits, and with regard to Vidhu Vinod Chopra's stance vis-a-vis Kashmiri Pandits, that how does he think that the Kashmiri Pandits will obtain justice now. So Vidhu Vinod Chopra in his answers was rather disappointing, and he stuck to a very vague, idealized and romanticized narrative of how there should be samvad instead of vivad, that is a dialogue instead of a conflict, and how the Kashmiri Pandits should sort of forget everything, should bury the past under the carpet and move on towards a future of peace and bonhum. Now, all that certainly sounds good in books, all that certainly sounds good on papers, because after all, in an idealized world, who doesn't want peace? Who doesn't want samvad? And this is the kind of idealized world we are all craving for, where everybody, irrespective of their caste, creed, religion, sex, gender, live an equal life, have access to the equal kind of resources and live a peaceful life. But the reality is, and that is the bitter reality, that this kind of romanticized, idealized version is far from real. And the reality is that the Kashmiri Pandits were displaced from their valleys. They were literally hounded out of the Kashmir valley because of the communal sentiment, because of the sentiment of Islamic jihad, Islamic militancy that gripped Jammu and Kashmir in the 1990s. So it wasn't a disinterested narrative of a certain misunderstanding, a certain fallout between the two communities, as Vidhu Vinod Chopra claims. It was akin to a criminal conspiracy initiated by the Pakistani jihadists, initiated at the behest of Pakistan. And no doubt a number of Kashmiri Muslims are also pawns to this whole jihadist, this whole hate campaign by Pakistan. But at the end of the day, nobody can deny the fact that it was a systematic effort at the ethnic cleansing of Kashmiri Muslims. It was a systematic sort of effort, systematic campaign to sort of annihilate their race and kick them out of the valley. So when there was so much of brutal annihilation of their identity, there was so much of violence and bloodshed over a period of 3 decades and unimaginable torture. So while Vidhu Vinod Chopra as a director, as an artist, has complete freedom to have his own point of view, but at the same time, and especially when he is a Kashmiri Pandit himself, at the same time it is certainly expected of him to be a bit sensitive to the plight of Kashmiri Pandits and to talk a bit concretely about the facts, about what actually happened when he's asked such questions on a news interview, rather than being completely vague and overtly diplomatic. Because the problem is that somebody who doesn't know so much about the problem of Kashmiri Pandits, if they hear this kind of interview which he has given, and even if he's just trying to sound optimistic, overtly optimistic, but his casual address, the way he's talking about that situation so casually and asking Kashmiri Pandits to just move on and forget everything, might actually make people assume that nothing happened in Kashmir after all. And this might even further trivialize the narrative of Kashmiri Pandits, which is already trivialized in the mainstream media discourse. It is nowhere in the international media as well. The issue is not taken seriously at all. So this will be a very dangerous thing. Now, many Kashmiri Pandits have strongly tweeted against Vidhu Vinod Chopra's interview, and they have said that they have accused him of trivializing such a grave, serious issue, and of doing great disservice to the collective pain of the whole community by talking so casually, so flippantly about the whole issue of Kashmiri Pandits. Several celebrities have also critiqued Vidhu Vinod Chopra's stance in Kashmiri Pandits, one of them being the noted semi-classical singer and Thumri exponent Malini Awasthi. And Malini Awasthi has also tweeted against his interview, coming on very strongly. And she has expressed disappointment very clearly at Vidhu Vinod Chopra's overtly diplomatic stand with regard to Kashmiri Pandits. Now, of course, however, though it won't be fair to deliver a verdict on this, because as we said, it is the first time that a film is actually being made on the issue of Kashmiri Pandits. And at least this issue is coming into the limelight for the first time, because for the past 30 years, this kind of thing hasn't happened. And let's not forget that Bollywood has a lot of potential, a lot of power to capture the popular imagination and to bring about some kind of change with regard to awareness on this topic. So I think it would be harsh to judge the director before the movie has even been released. So we should definitely wait for the movie to be released and watch the movie and then form an opinion. But at the same time, we do hope that the movie doesn't completely overtly idealize or romanticize an issue that is a grave human rights issue, and one that hasn't been talked about at all. So one just hopes that the movie deals with the issue of Kashmiri Pandits sensitively. Now coming to the media portrayal of the plight of Kashmiri Pandits, the left liberal media is largely to blame for the complete absence of the issue from the public domain. So the issue of Kashmiri Pandits, and it's unimaginable, for the past 30 years, the issue hasn't been in the public domain at all. The horrorsome story of the brutal gang rape and murder of Girija Tikku still sends shivers down her spine. And sadly, it is also a story that has mostly been avoided or shunned by the mainstream media. The paradox is that the mainstream media, which has talked about millions of atrocities and which daily talks about millions of atrocities on Kashmiri Muslims due to the rise of militancy in the valley, doesn't spare any space, doesn't have any space to talk about the atrocities commented on Kashmiri Pandits. If you Google the word Girija Tikku on internet, you won't find any news from mainstream news sources. Most of the news that is coming is from alternative and relatively unknown news sources. And that too, you would see the news over a period of past 1 or 2 years. Now, isn't it shocking? It's hard to imagine, but a newspaper, Indian left liberal media, the newspapers, the electronic media channels couldn't find human interest stories about the plight of Kashmiri Pandits, couldn't find any stories to run about the plight of Kashmiri Pandits over a period of 30 years is literally shocking and unimaginable. And not just that, the mainstream media also tries to manipulate the whole issue. So no, it's not the fact that there is no news about Kashmiri Pandits, not only that is an issue, but whatever news is there is manipulated to suit the agenda of the left liberal media. So first of all, there are many articles and opinion pieces in the Indian left liberal media which try to which try to give the impression that nothing actually happened exclusively to Kashmiri Pandits, that whatever happened was a part of the larger militancy wave that swept through Jammu and Kashmir in 1990 that affected both Hindus and Muslims alike. Now, nothing could be farther from the truth. Of course, one does accept that the Muslims living in Jammu Kashmir also were a victim of the Pakistani Islamic militancy, wave of Islamic militancy that swept through Jammu and Kashmir in 1990s. But the truth remains that the problem of Kashmiri Pandits was a problem of a different nature. It definitely had a religious dimension to it. Definitely had a communal dimension to it. The Kashmiri Pandits were definitely targeted because they were Hindus. And the jihadist hate sentiment propagated by Pakistan unfortunately led many to turn against Kashmiri Pandits, and they were literally forced to leave the valley. So if the left liberal media, the left liberal intelligentsia claims to be secular, then they surely have to understand, and that they surely must know, that not talking about the plight of Kashmiri Pandits, choosing to skip the plight, choosing to skip a conversation on the plight of a huge section of society, of a huge community, just because they happen to be Hindus, is also being non-secular. So the left liberal media, before talking about secular, should examine the real definition of the word secular. The word secular has always been manipulated by the left liberal media in India to just do Muslim appeasement, to just talk about Muslims. Whereas if they were really secular in the real sense of the word secular means being impartial to all religions. So somebody who is secular in the true sense, and talking about the word secular in the constitution as well, somebody who is secular in the true sense would talk about, would give equal weightage to plight of any community, be they Hindus, Muslims or whatever. And not just try to build a disproportionate narratives against the Hindus and trying to portray them as the oppressor all the time. But unfortunately, this is what has happened to the Kashmiri Pandits. The Kashmiri Pandits have become a victim of the Muslim appeasement policy of the left liberal media. The Kashmiri Pandits have become bait in the process. And if this is not enough, then there are opinion pieces and articles also talking about how Kashmiri Pandits left willingly on their accord, how they left because they were sort of falsely fearful, and how there was actually bonhomie between them and the Muslims, and there was really nothing that much happened in the valley at that time. And to add to all this shamelessness, there are fabricated accounts, manipulated accounts, narrative accounts by certain Kashmiri Pandits in the mainstream world media, which are talking about, which are again sort of trying to give a false sense of what actually happened, which are again trying to trivialize the issue of Kashmiri Pandits, which are again trying to make light of the issue of Kashmiri Pandits. So it's really sad, and the question is that what needs to be done? So there needs to be a systematic campaign to counter all this, wherein all those who are researching the topic of Kashmiri Pandits, all the journalists, and basically various stakeholders connected, including the Kashmiri Pandit community across the world, these various stakeholders need to come together and work towards making the issue of Kashmiri Pandits visible, give it greater visibility on an international platform. Because only when this issue is visible in an international arena, the hegemony of the left liberal as a sole authority on what actually happened in Kashmir will be challenged. And last but not the least, the Indian government needs to work out some kind of a roadmap for the return of Pandits, Kashmiri Pandits, to the valley. And even if they don't want to return forever, they should certainly feel safe enough to be able to visit their homes, to be able to visit the valley, and to be able to reclaim their cultural roots. Now, building exclusive ghettos is not the solution. It can never be the solution. So the solution is a gradual building of a gradual peaceful atmosphere, and the removal of Article 370 has already initiated that process. Things have begun to normalize in Jammu and Kashmir. So an atmosphere has to be created in which they can go there without fear. And the beginning has been made, and let's hope there is more progress soon. Thank you.